and the performer both of them are. I really got lucky, and Joe and me and me and Joe had a conversation, and me and AJ had a conversation.
What up, everyone? SHAK here for Cageside Seats, and you know who this is. He will do to you with a guitar what Math does to me. That's caused a pretty bad headache. He's been a world champion everywhere, from WCW to TNA, AAA. It is, of course, Jeff Jarrett. How are you, sir?
Jack, my friend. So it's not Shakiel. Shakiel's what your mother calls you.
You know what? I actually, weird story. I used to cry as a child when people would refer to me by SHAK. But listen, when the gimmick sticks, embrace it. So whatever you want to call me, I'm okay with.
Well, what we can call each other that's broadcast friendly, I'll call you SHAK. No, all right, I like Shakiel, good. To tell you the truth. Full name?
I like Shakiel as well. Is Jeff technically short for Jeffrey?
It is. R-E-Y, not E-R-Y. So don't screw it up.
No. I imagine people are get the double R's mixed up from time to time anyway. Now, speaking of the guitars, I would like to start here. Not to start on the idea of putting anyone through anything uncomfortable, but having hit so many people over the head with a guitar over the years, are there any that stick out to you as like a particularly rough one, or something went a little bit awry of the target?
You know, going back through the years, there's always the fun ones to talk about, whether it's Gary Coleman or Beetlejuice, or maybe my personal favorite would be the Fabulous Moolah hitting a 70-plus-year-old woman with guitar in 1999. Had just a different ring to it. But, the thing, I guess, SHAK, the first one that comes to mind, there was a series when me and Kurt Angle were going at it. And man, for whatever reason, he's got a great target, a nice bald head. He's easy. He doesn't mind pain whatsoever, but for whatever reason, there was like 2 or 3 in a row. And I'm not talking about the same night, but several weeks apart, but somehow, some way I busted him open like 2 or 3 consecutive times. And, but it happens, I've been hit by my own guitar a couple of times, and so I feel the pain, but it has happened more than you would think. That, oh man, that was a pretty stiff shot, but it happens. It's as they say, it's not ballet.
It is not ballet. I understand that they like hollow out part of the inside of the guitar to make it a little bit safer. What about the strings? That always seems like a precarious part of the instrument to me.
In every guitar, sometimes I'll say it's doctored up pretty good, and other times not very much at all.
Wow.
So there are harder guitars than other, and through the years, through the tricks of the trade, it's still not a perfect science. A little footnote on guitars is that years ago they were all American made, and they were, I don't say handcrafted, but machines, and they're actually little bitty tack nails and glue and all that. Well, now they're shipped overseas, and they're pressed, and they're almost, I don't say like plastic, but they're put together completely different and glued and all that. So guitars nowadays are much more durable than they used to be. But no, strings, sometimes you leave them on, sometimes they cut my hands, that can be dangerous. Other times they can be replaced by anything, plastic, fishing line. It just depends. But sometimes no strings. We're really getting into the intricacies, aren't we, SHAK?
Well, I mean, listen, it's, I think, to some effect, one of the key trademarks of Jeff Jarrett. And so I like to be, I have curiosities. I'm not going to ask you too much about the stuff you've been asked a million times, I hope. And something that came across, I put out a little Q&A tweet. I think you may have saw it. And one of the interesting, sometimes you get some dumb questions. Sometimes you get some gems. And one of the gems was, I was unfamiliar with this. You, by the grace of God, I imagine, survived a kick from one of the most dangerous people on the planet, Chuck Norris. What are your memories of working with Chuck and how that spot came together?
SHAK, obviously we've sort of come together with our mutual PR fella at Ad Free Shows in My World. And so we covered this on My World. It's a lot of fun, and we hadn't got into the deep, dark story of it. But Survivor Series 94, just the sort of the setting of it, and Chuck Norris from Texas. The Survivor Series was in San Antonio, and somehow, some way, I don't know if I volunteered or it was a mutual one. I was the I got the short straw, and I was the young guy on the team. But I've always sort of taken it with a badge of honor, and maybe I was an idiot at times, but no, I had no problem doing it. But, Chuck is, just his acting career and Hollywood and everything that goes with it. But he obviously knows how to throw a kick, and he put it right in there. And I saw that on Twitter. It was interesting feedback, wasn't it?
Well, the angle was kind of hard to tell because it was like directly behind you. Like, how was it? There? What's I'm looking for? Did it land? Did it actually land? Was it? Oh.
It landed. If it would have caught me in the throat, that'd have been a different story. But it was right square on the chest, exactly where Chuck wanted to place it. I'll say that.
Perfect. Well, at least he stuck by his words, a true professional in that sense. Let's talk a little bit about the pod. I know leading into it, you did a bit of a press run promoting My World. I saw you with Chris Van Vliet, amazing interview there. Sean Ross Sapp as well. Now that you've gotten in the reps, what has sort of been the most enlightening part of this experience? Because you told me before we started, it's not something you ever really saw yourself doing.
And I didn't. And, I tell the story that during the pandemic, I was off the road for the first time really in my entire life for that extended a period. But I watched the Last Dance with Michael Jordan. And I'm a Bulls fan. I'm a basketball junkie. I loved it. When I watched it, the light bulb went off. I said, okay, there may be infotainment. There may be some entertainment to this. But as you said, getting a couple of reps behind me now and Conrad steering the ship and picking the topics, I really had no idea in so many ways how much fun I would have with it. Mm-hmm. Is that, sitting down and talking about it. And that's why, we did a Stone Cold Steve Austin episode, and they like to refer to it as me and Conrad had a dust up, but it was a lack of communication. But at the end of the day, I have now approached my podcast really like I approach anything in life, business, personal, whatever. If I'm going to do this, I want to do it for the very best I can, because if somebody's going to sit down, just like if somebody's going to come up and buy a wrestling ticket or a pay-per-view or just come to a live event and invest 3 hours of their time with their friends or family, whatever it is, I'm a promoter by heart. I'm an entertainer, born and bred. But I also know the value of someone investing their time. So people have so many options today. So if they're going to invest in My World and push play and listen, for an hour, 2 hours, I want to make sure that I'm doing everything in my power to not entertain them. That comes sort of, some are entertaining, some are not, but as much in depth and as much recall, and I really want to get into it. And that's one of the things, though, that with me working with the researchers and Conrad, I really had no idea I would have this much fun, but I'm really enjoying going back and look at the stories and just, the old quote, to teach is to learn twice. Well, to reminisce is to learn twice as well.
And that's actually a beautiful segue, but I'm gonna sort of pivot around it because I want to end this. It's not quite as nice as Chris Van Vliet's gratitude, but I do want to end this on a bit of a trip down memory lane. So I'll save. We'll get back to the podcast. You said you're a promoter at heart, and I think for me, what was a really pivotal time in my fandom as I was sort of phasing in and out of pro wrestling was the success that TNA was having in the mid to late 2000s. And two of those guys that went on to have really amazing careers, not just with TNA and Impact, but with WWE, Samoa Joe, AJ Styles. I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit. What is it like seeing, obviously Samoa Joe's had some health issues, but what is it like seeing those guys be able to achieve so much when maybe traditionally they wouldn't have been seen in the past as the WWE type of guy?
And there's a lot of different ways to look at that. And I have discussed it with Joe and AJ, and, it's real easy for me to sit here and think or say, oh man, the opportunity in TNA, the real reality is I was very fortunate, very blessed. I'm very grateful that those guys, the timing worked out. AJ literally from North Georgia and driving up from his house to Nashville, Tennessee every Wednesday. And as he grew through the product, he's really the face of TNA from about 2002, 2010. Obviously things changed when it turned Impact and the Hogan era. But AJ and Joe really cornerstones of not just the X division, but the entire company. And when I saw them, when I went back, me and AJ went to Japan and the Bullet Club, but I've stayed obviously in contact with those. They're buddies of mine. And AJ and his kids and my kids. And the other day, my daughter was just talking about, remember when AJ Styles used to throw us out in the pool down in Orlando, just little things like that. But here they, all these years later, and the performer both of them are, I really got lucky. And Joe and me and me and Joe had a conversation, and me and AJ had a conversation. I'm very grateful for those times, but how lucky was I as a promoter to get both of those guys? So I really think if it wouldn't have been us at TNA, it would have been somewhere else, because I'm a big believer. The cream always rises to the top. They're great talents with or without TNA, and I sincerely mean that.
One of the, it seems like every 10 to 15 years, someone emerges to sort of challenge WWE for that piece of the marketplace and the market share. Obviously, the latest to do so is AEW. And I think a lot of fans like to draw comparisons between AEW and where TNA was in that battle with the WWE, if you consider it. So where do you think the similarities are the most accurate between AEW and TNA? And what do you think may be something that people get totally wrong when trying to equate the two?
Oh, wow. Good question. I mean, I guess the natural low-hanging fruit, the most simplistic, is the alternative. That it's impossible. I mean, Avis and Hertz, their whole slogan for years was, we try harder. Harder than who? The number one. They're okay with me at number two. It's the same thing, years ago when McDonald's was, the hamburger joint where you put up Wendy's or Burger King or whatever success. Having that alternative, rising tide rises all ships. There's a lot of those simple, sometimes silly sayings, but it's very true. They are the alternative. And, Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola. I mean, we could go on and on with the analogies, but I think the similarity is that the alternative, at the very end of the day, I truly believe, and I think Vince McMahon would agree with this, it's the best for business to always have an alternative. It just is. It's just what sort of make business goes around, because if you're the only game in town, you're not number one, because there's not a number two. It just is what it is. I think being the alternative is the striking similarity. You asked me a two-part question though. So
what do people get wrong about that comparison, or where are they? Maybe where TNA and AEW may be furthest apart.
And I'm not saying that everybody does this, but from time to time you'll just see it. The timing of when TNA started, coming off the Attitude Era, and the timing when AEW started, radically different world, pre-social media world, coming off the Attitude Era. And I say that television, when TBS and TNT canceled their wrestling, I couldn't even get a phone call from a network. Well, fast forward, the big rights fees with NBC and Fox and the Peacock situation and Sony around the world and India and all the different markets, it's a completely different playing field of 2002 and 2019 in the launch period, in that the climate's completely different. The television ratings. I mean, we started on a Saturday night on Spike TV in 0506, and on Saturday night we were getting eight, not prime, off prime, so 11 Eastern, we were getting 700,000 or 800,000 viewers. Wow. On Saturday night primetime, and I mean late prime, just the numbers are different. It was pre-streaming world, pre-social media world. When you factor into all that, it's literally, in so many ways, a completely different media market.
When AEW first launched, and a number of high-profile wrestlers outside the WWE, guys like the Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes, Kenny Omega, were named as executive vice presidents, I think there was a portion of the potential audience that was like, oh, is this going to be the sort of thing where the inmates are running the asylum, where these guys are going to put themselves over constantly? And it reminded me, there are examples, obviously, through history, WWE, WCW, and beyond, of people in that dual position of booker and wrestler maybe taking advantage of it. The one that actually always sticks out in my mind is when John Cena, I think it was Edge, Chris Jericho, Daniel Bryan, maybe someone else were supposed to take on the Nexus at the time, Wade Barrett and company. And it seemed like everyone but John Cena was on board with the understanding that it's time to put these Nexus guys over. What ends up happening is John Cena basically wins a 1v5. And he came out after the fact and said that was a mistake. I was wondering, as someone like yourself who's been in that position of being a booker and a wrestler, what is the most regrettable decision you made that maybe involved you or the talent immediately around you? Just looking back on it.
That's really hard because the wearing, my regret, I think is your specific question. What are my regrets? Yeah. But I don't even know the solution in a lot of ways because I wore so many hats. But when you don't have a quote unquote open checkbook, you have a finite amount of dollars and cents, and you have to put on your finance cap and make the difference between black ink and red ink, and then a creative, and then production, all across the board. It's a very challenging environment in so many ways. And so wearing multiple hats, but when I look on in my personal life and my professional life and how things went along, and when we finally got Kurt, I got to really take off that talent hat for the most part. Yeah. That was a huge relief. And I look at the growth from basically 2007 till 2009, when I didn't have to just day in, day out, and saw the growth. So, but also, I don't really live with regrets.
Yeah.
But overall, because, at the end of the day, I never woke up and said, SHAK, today, what bad decision can I make? Let me see how I can. No, I'm an owner, the largest majority, even when Panda bought out, I was still the largest single stakeholder. So I had more on the line than anybody. So I didn't wake up thinking, how can I screw this up today? Did I make mistakes? Absolutely. But,
sure. but let's take the sting off the question. Sorry, if I may. Let's take the sting off the question, because I don't think it was intended as such. Is there maybe any wrestler under your banner that maybe, or under your watch, under your supervision, that maybe in hindsight you would have wanted to do something a little bit different with, that maybe had you taken a different road, you may have gotten more out of them?
Look, and that's really playing armchair quarterback even for myself. But when I look back on the stars that we developed, and we touched on two of them.
So many.
AJ, but one after another. And at the end of the day, a guy can have a great performance. And I'm not talking about a match, a promo and a storyline or whatever it is that all went into one. It's that consistency. Okay, you did it 1 week, you're going to do it the second week. You're going to do the second week, you're going to do the third week, and the fourth week, and the fifth week. And that's where I truly believe, and I hate to be repetitive because we've already sort of covered this, but the cream always rises to the top. Yeah. AJ was a consistent performer. Joe, Bobby Roode, Eric Young. I could go down the list and list. I mean, who would have thought in 2021 we'd be watching Sting wrestle? He may be the most consistent performer. You got to put Flair up there through the years, but as far as consistency, what you're getting with Sting.
Oh,
he delivers. That means so much as a booker, promoter, executive producer, creative person. The consistency, because when guys show up, are they always going to hit a grand slam? Probably not. Are they always going to get a home run? No, but get on base and deliver. And that is really what makes the company, the promotion, and the product continue to grow, is the consistency of when you look at the Attitude Era, WWE consistently started doing better shows, but we're still lacking in the ratings. But day by day, day in, day out, they finally came. It's the product. Same with WCW. They were putting out a great product. So I could talk, Shaq, I'm enjoying this because we could talk all kinds of shop like this.
Yes. But I know we're over time, so I will.
No, we're not. It's up to you.
Well, that's so kind of you. But I do want to end it on this. First of all, I'm a big believer in consistency is key. So we're on the same wavelength there. What I do want to end this on, though, I want to circle back to the podcast. What I love about shows like yours is I'm big on nostalgia. I like reflecting fondly on moments in my life, whether they be of a big scale or just something kind of funny and off the beaten path. And a podcast like yours gives you the chance to relive a lot of moments that you may not otherwise really think about or may not come up in conversation. So I want to ask, over the course of the dozens of episodes that you've done now, what is the fondest memory the podcast brought up that maybe you haven't thought about in a long time?
Oh, gosh. That's a really good one. kudos to you. You've thought about this interview, which
I'm constantly thinking, Jeff. It's a gift and a curse.
Me making the decision and going to my fathers and others and saying, hey, I got to go to Japan and do this angle with Hogan, but that's like a $10,000-$12,000 airline ticket. I'm just going to cash in my miles because my new investor needs to see that I'm all in and I'm not just asking for money. Reminiscing about that was a good decision I made because, it's subtly, but I didn't think about it at the time. Bob Carter's going, all right, this guy wants this, the little decisions like that, the WCW Bash at the Beach, those type of situations when I don't want to say it's finally, but when I think back, I'm going, man, I was in a lot of ways backed in the corner, but I did what I was told and made the best of the situation, moved on. SHAK, I could go on and on. Raising the capital to launch TNA. I hadn't thought about the story of me going down and meeting with Richard Scrusty and raising the funds and that kind of stuff. The good days, as we launched, a lot of those. Man, I could go on the fans' revenge match with Samoa Joe. That was a time as a character, a heel. Had a lot of heat. They hated me, and we delivered to the fans a good payoff in that match and kept Joe's undefeated streak going. So I could go on and on about that. But the podcast, those kind of moments, to me, is what my world's all about. And me and Conrad sitting down, having the conversation like we're sitting out back and letting the fans come in to the discussion and be a part of it. That's a real, I'll say the word joy, brings a lot of joy to me that I'm enjoying it. Conrad's enjoying it. And I believe the listeners are as well.
That's amazing to hear. I want to leave you with the last word, Jeff. So I'll get my little spiel out of the way now. Guys, if you like the video, please thumbs up, subscribe, comment. That drives so much engagement. Shout out to Cageside Seats for empowering the video aspect as always. Jeff Jarrett, whether it's my world or someone whose head needs to get bashed in with a guitar, I'm going to let you finish this off and let everyone know everything they need to know.
Oh, well, no, I
should know.
I'll leave
you may want them to know.
Whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, it's all at Real Jeff Jarrett, or my website is realjeffjarrett.com. That'll give you everything. I make it easy. Real Jeff Jarrett, and that's JEFFJARRET. Double T. That's double J, Jeff Jarrett.